After the meeting, my coworker brought me coffee. It tasted strange. I didn't think much of it at first. The bitter note could have come from burnt beans or some leftover detergent in the cup. But there was something about the aftertaste, a dry chemical film that clung to the back of my tongue, that made me pause halfway through the sip. The conference room still smelled of stress, that sterile mix of carpet, marker ink, and faint deodorant. After the argument we'd been reviewing a security patch that could have cost the company millions if released without full testing. I'd refused to sign the deployment form, saying we needed another QA cycle. My coworker Brian had taken it personally. He was the project's golden boy, the one who always fixed what others broke. The meeting ended with him slamming his laptop shut, muttering that I was slowing everyone down. 10 minutes later, he appeared beside my desk with a smile so polished it hurt to look at. "Peace offering," he said, holding out a paper cup. "Double espresso, just the way you like it. Let's call it even, yeah?" I wanted to believe him. The office air was heavy after that fight, and his tone was just light enough to sound sincere. I took the cup, nodded, said thanks. The lid was already on, the sleeve warm in my hand. I lifted it, took that sip. And there it was, that wrongness. Bitter cherry, metallic edge, something you'd only notice if you'd spent too many years in sterile labs, calibrating your senses to detect anomalies. He lingered a little too long, watching me drink. When I set the cup down, he clapped my shoulder. "Good talk earlier," he said. "Let's both try to cool off." He left before I could answer. For a while, I tried to focus on code reviews, but the screen blurred, and my fingertips felt heavy, as if I were typing underwater. I blinked, took a deep breath, and counted the seconds until the dizziness subsided. It didn't. My head floated, my pulse slowed. I opened the cup again. The smell was faint, roasted coffee and something medicinal. I tilted it just enough to see a film on top, a slick pattern like oil on water. I don't panic easily, but years of compliance training had drilled one thing into me: document everything. I grabbed my phone, snapped 3 quick photos: the cup, the lid, the timestamp on my monitor. Then I sealed the cup inside a Ziploc bag from my lunchbox. My reflection in the monitor looked pale. I stood, nearly stumbled, and grabbed my keys. The urgent care clinic was 4 blocks away. By the time I got there, my vision was tunneling. The nurse took one look at me and pulled me straight to triage. "Caffeine overdose?" she asked. "Doubt it," I managed. "It's chemical." They drew blood. The lights were too bright, the room too cold. I lay there, trying to steady my breathing while a tech attached electrodes to my chest. When the results came back, the doctor's expression shifted from routine to careful. "You've got traces of diphenhydramine and a benzodiazepine compound. Not lethal, but definitely not in any coffee." He asked if I'd taken anything. I shook my head. He asked if I had trusted whoever made me the drink. I didn't answer. When I left, the city looked unreal. Too sharp, too bright, every sound stretched thin. The paper in my hand crinkled with the toxicology summary. It wasn't enough to accuse anyone, but enough to tell me I wasn't imagining it. Back in my car, I set the bagged cup beside me like evidence from a crime scene. My hands shook as I started the engine. I didn't want to believe it was Brian. We'd worked side by side for 3 years, shared late-night deadlines. He'd brought me lunch during the outage last winter, but something about his smile replayed in my head. Too symmetrical, too fast to fade. The way he'd waited until everyone left the meeting room. I drove home, locked the cup in the freezer, and sent myself an email titled Incident Log. I wrote everything: the time, the smell, the symptoms, the doctor's notes, line by line, timestamp by timestamp. Then I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the entry for a long time. I could have gone to HR. I could have called the police. But I didn't. Not yet. Because I wanted to know why. If he'd really tried to drug me, there had to be a reason. Something bigger than office rivalry. and I wasn't going to confront him without proof. I'd seen how this company handled misunderstandings. Allegations got buried. Whistleblowers disappeared under paperwork. So I made a decision that night. I wouldn't get angry. I wouldn't run. I'd get evidence. I opened my laptop and started a new folder, labeled Incident A. Inside, I dropped the photos, the PDF from the clinic, the exported metadata from my phone. Then I wrote the next line of the log. Objective, determine motive, identify opportunity, secure proof. The cursor blinked at the end of that sentence for a long time before I added one more note, almost to myself. Do not drink anything you didn't make, ever again. And as I closed the file, my phone buzzed with a message from Brian. Feeling better? Heard you left early. Let's talk tomorrow morning. Coffee's on me. I stared at the screen until the message faded. Then I took a slow breath and whispered, Yeah, let's talk. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the thin film swirling on the coffee's surface, that strange, oily shimmer, and heard Brian's voice again, casual, easy, rehearsed. By morning, the dizziness had faded, replaced by something colder, precision. I showered, shaved, and drove to the office early before the rest of the team arrived. The building was still waking up, the hum of HVAC, the low click of badge readers unlocking doors. I walked through the empty corridor toward my desk, coffee-free this time, and booted up my computer. The first thing I did was open the audit folder. It was still there, the packet that had caused the argument. A stack of vendor invoices from an offshore partner, neatly itemized, but something about them had felt wrong. Prices rounded too cleanly, descriptions vague. Consulting, 48 hours. Logistics oversight, 12 hours. No signatures, no timestamps. And one approval box, empty. Mine. Brian had pushed me to sign it during yesterday's meeting. It's standard, he'd said. Just sign it and move on. You're holding up the pipeline. But I'd seen a buried note in the metadata, an internal code linking those invoices to a hospitality budget, the same one the CFO had been quietly reviewing for anomalies. If those invoices were fake, someone was laundering money, someone like Brian. Still, speculation wasn't proof. I needed something irrefutable. When the others arrived, I played the part of a man still shaken. I smiled faintly when Brian walked in, pretending not to notice the flicker of calculation in his eyes. Rough night? He asked, leaning against my cubicle wall. Headache? I said. Think I overdid the caffeine? He grinned. Told you, I make it strong. The moment he left, I typed a short note to myself. Suspect tests, limits. Wants confirmation that dose worked. I forwarded a copy of the audit packet to my private email, encrypted it, and stored a duplicate on a flash drive. Then I went downstairs to the security desk. Eddie, the night shift lead, had known me since onboarding, retired Marine, trusted no one. When I asked if I could review camera logs from the break room, he raised an eyebrow. Something happen? Let's say a food safety concern, I said. He smirked. You gonna tell HR? Not yet. He shrugged. Your funeral. We scrolled through footage from yesterday, 3:08 p.m. There I was, sitting alone, typing. Then Brian entered the frame, holding 2 cups. He set one on the counter, looked around, removed the lid, and poured something from a small packet. The motion was quick, practiced, like someone adding sugar. But sugar doesn't make you dizzy. He replaced the lid, smiled toward the camera as if posing for a thumbnail, and walked out. I paused the frame and took a photo of the monitor. It wasn't high resolution, but enough to show the white packet in his hand. My hands trembled as I thanked Eddie and left. The rage I'd been suppressing started to pulse again, but I kept it leashed. Emotion would ruin everything. I needed to understand the why before I made a move. That afternoon, I visited an independent toxicology lab downtown. I told them the residue in the bag might contain benzodiazepines, asked for a full analysis and chain of custody documentation. The tech, a woman named Marisol, nodded with the calm efficiency of someone who'd seen worse. We'll log it officially, she said. Do you need it rushed? Very, I said, and confidential. That night, the city outside my window glowed like static. I opened my laptop and reviewed my notes. The pieces were forming a pattern. One too clean to be coincidence. Motive. If those invoices cleared, the funds would vanish into a shell vendor. A few signatures, a quick approval, and the audit trail would point to me as the final verifier. When the fraud surfaced, the blame would land squarely on my desk. Brian would be the whistleblower, the savior. Opportunity. I'd refuse to sign. He needed me discredited or pliant. A mild sedative cocktail could make me unreliable, erratic, maybe even get me placed on leave. Outcome, he keeps his job, I lose mine. The audit clears, the money moves. But what Brian didn't count on was that I keep records. I created a new subfolder, Phase 2, Controlled Observation. I documented everything from the morning, timestamps, emails, interactions. Then, as the clock neared midnight, I drafted an internal message scheduled for 8:45 a.m. Subject, audit sign-off. Let's finalize tomorrow morning. I'll bring the packet by before stand-up. A bait. Simple, irresistible. The next morning I arrived early again. This time I brought 2 identical travel mugs. One empty, one filled with plain black coffee. I labeled the bottoms with tiny pencil marks only I could recognize. The empty mug went on my desk. The filled one stayed locked in my drawer. When Brian arrived, he seemed lighter, confident, even cheerful. "You look better," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "Think the worst is over." He nodded toward the mug. Braving it again. "Yeah, needed something to keep me awake." He smiled. That smile again. The salesman's grin that never touched his eyes. "You sure you're up for the review?" "Positive," I said. "Let's grab coffee later. My treat." He hesitated just for a second, like someone recalculating a move mid-game. Then he said, "Sounds good." As he walked away, I reached under my desk, pulled out a small handheld UV inspection lamp, the kind used in QA for surface contamination. I flicked it on. The rim of the empty mug glowed faintly, the residue from the powder I'd rubbed there last night, invisible under normal light. But if anyone touched the lid or the handle, it would transfer to their skin. I turned off the lamp, leaned back, and waited. The rest of the morning passed in agonizing slow motion. Every sound, footsteps, printers, murmured meetings, felt amplified. Then just before lunch, I saw him. Brian walking toward my desk while I was away at the copier. He paused, looked around, then reached for the mug. My heart pounded. He lifted the lid, slipped something in, stirred once, replaced it, and left. Calm, efficient. The camera above the hallway caught everything. When I returned, I didn't touch the cup. Instead, I sealed it in another bag and noted the time. 11:54 a.m. Phase 2 was complete. At home that night, I switched off the lights and turned on the UV lamp. The fingerprints on the cup lid glowed bright blue. And when I waved the lamp over my desk photos from earlier that day, the residue trailed across the same pattern as Brian's motion on video. He'd taken the bait. I emailed Marisol to expect another sample. Then I sat in silence for a long time, staring at the frozen frame from the camera feed. Brian's hand hovering over my cup, the faint reflection of someone standing behind him. It wasn't just him, because in that reflection, half hidden by the glare, was another figure, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a lanyard with a silver badge, our manager. And suddenly, the motive wasn't just about one man's ambition, it was about collusion. The reflection on the screen haunted me. It wasn't just Brian's hand near my cup. It was our manager, Miller, standing behind him, half shielded by the glare from the break room window. His posture was casual, but his attention was locked on the cup. He was watching, supervising. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. The silver glint on his lanyard confirmed it. The departmental badge only issued to senior managers. My stomach twisted, not from fear this time, but from the sick satisfaction of realizing the scale of what I had uncovered. 2 people, not one impulsive coworker, a conspiracy. The next morning I returned to the office calm, almost unnaturally so. I'd reached the point where emotion gave way to strategy. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about proof. I arrived early again. The hallways smelled of printer toner and fresh carpet cleaner. I went straight to the kitchenette, the same one from the footage, and slipped a new device beneath the counter. A small, motion-activated micro camera. It faced the coffee machine disguised as a power adapter. Above the cabinets, a second camera from building security already covered the area, but I needed redundancy. If they tried again, I'd have them from 2 angles. By 8:30, the office was filling up. Miller was already pacing by the window, phone in hand. Brian stood near the coffee station, pretending to scroll through his messages. I played my part, the quiet, weary engineer, trying to get through the day. At 8:45, my scheduled email went out. Subject, audit sign-off. Hey, I'll swing by after the 10 a.m. sync. We can finalize everything today. Almost immediately, I saw movement. Brian's head lifted. He pocketed his phone, glanced at Miller. A small nod passed between them, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. Miller's mouth didn't move, but his expression said everything. Do it now. I pretended not to notice. At 9, I excused myself, saying I needed to grab a report from the printer room. My desk sat empty, save for one item. A stainless steel mug, identical to the one from yesterday, except this one wasn't empty. Inside was a decoy, plain water, mixed with a traceable inert dye and a mild preservative to trap residue. I stepped out. From the hallway camera feed on my tablet, I watched Brian approach my desk again. Same rhythm, same confidence. But this time, Miller was right beside him. Brian glanced around, then unscrewed the lid. Miller's hand moved, a quick motion, subtle. Something silver between his fingers. The camera caught it, a capsule crushed against the rim before the lid went back on. They didn't notice the blinking LED on the outlet cam. When I returned, I said nothing. I sat, typed, drank from a different cup entirely, one I'd filled from the downstairs machine, and kept my breathing steady. By lunchtime, the decoy mug was sealed in evidence bag number 3. The footage uploaded automatically to a secure drive. I spent the afternoon reviewing line items in the audit packet, cross-referencing timestamps. That's when I found the last piece, a signature mismatch. One of the digital approvals from the vendor bore a certificate that resolved to an internal alias, B. Miller int admin. Miller himself had forged back-end access to authorize payments routed through Brian's department. Together, they'd built a system where they could issue fake invoices, get them approved, and bury the traces under legitimate project budgets. And I was the final gatekeeper they couldn't bypass. So they'd tried to bypass me. That night, I met with Eddie in the back lot by the loading dock. The rain had just stopped. The asphalt gleamed under the sodium lights. I handed him a flash drive. It's all on here. Video, timestamps, chain of custody, I said. But I need building audio access tomorrow, just during the board review. He whistled low. This big? Bigger than you think. He nodded once. You got it. When I got home, I opened the new lab report from Marisol. The sample from the decoy mug showed the same compounds as before. Benzodiazepine derivative, consistent concentration, identical solubility signature. The probability of coincidence, 0. I stared at the results, the clean black ink on white paper. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like exhaustion. 3 years of loyalty, late nights, shared wins, and inside jokes, all of it hollow. I replayed every smile from Miller, every good work from Brian, every Friday beer where they called me the cautious one. It had all been scaffolding for this moment, grooming trust to make betrayal look like an accident. But tomorrow, I'd end it. At dawn, I arrived an hour before anyone else. I copied every piece of evidence onto 3 drives. one locked in my car, one mailed to my private attorney, one for the meeting. Then I wrote a short memo titled Incident Chain for the Board. At 9 a.m., the quarterly audit review began. The long conference table gleamed under the LED lights. Glasses of water lined up, not one of which I touched. The board chair sat at the head, HR beside her, compliance across. Miller stood at the far end, smiling his politician smile. Brian looked composed but pale. I took the last seat. The chair looked up. You had some concerns about the audit file, correct? Yes, I said evenly, and I'd like to walk you through my findings. I reached into my briefcase, pulled out the flash drive, and slid it across the table. The air in the room shifted. I clicked open the first file. Video stills. Brian's hand over my cup, Miller's reflection, the timestamp, the packet. Then the second. The toxicology reports. 2 identical matches. Finally, the third. The approval logs, showing Miller's forged alias. Silence. The board chair's eyes narrowed. Is this authentic? I met her gaze. All chain of custody documented. Independent lab verification. Security timestamp verified by building access logs. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then Miller spoke, voice trembling slightly. This is absurd. You're trying to frame us because I refused to sign. I interrupted. Because I wouldn't authorize embezzled funds disguised as vendor invoices. Brian's chair scraped the floor. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, I said. And the compound you slipped into my drink says otherwise. I clicked the next slide. The lab report with both their fingerprints highlighted in ultraviolet overlay. Miller's jaw went slack. HR whispered something to security. 2 guards moved to the door. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across Brian's face. Not the fear of being caught, but of realizing the game had ended before he knew it had started. The chair's voice cut the silence. You'll both remain here until legal arrives. Mr. Raines, she turned to me, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll handle the rest. I nodded once, closed my laptop, and stood. My pulse was steady. No triumph, no anger, just the hollow calm of inevitability. As I stepped out into the corridor, I heard the first raised voices behind the door. Miller's protest, Brian's panicked denial. The sound faded as the door shut. Downstairs, Eddie leaned against the wall, arms crossed. That the end of it? Almost, I said. Now comes the paperwork. He grinned. You're colder than you look, man. Not cold, I said quietly. Just done being naive. Outside, the rain had stopped completely. The world felt sharper, cleaner, like the storm had washed away the static. The boardroom fallout spread through the building like smoke. By noon, the story had already changed hands 3 times, from whispers to certainty. Security walked them out, someone said near the elevators. Handcuffed, another added wide-eyed. Rumors grew legs faster than truth ever could. But this time, truth didn't need help. I sat in my car, parked across the street from the glass tower that had once felt like a second home. The same building that 48 hours ago had nearly become my tomb. The rain had dried from the asphalt, leaving thin silver streaks of residue that looked like veins under skin. My phone buzzed, an internal message from HR, subject line. Outcome of Incident 14A. I opened it. The tone was sterile, almost inhuman. After review of submitted evidence and security findings, employees Brian L. and Michael M. have been terminated effective immediately for gross misconduct, criminal tampering, and falsification of financial records. The matter has been referred to law enforcement and federal auditors. A compliance hold has been placed on all related projects. You are cleared of any involvement. That last line, you are cleared, hit harder than I expected. Not relief, exactly. More like the ache after a wound finally stops bleeding. Below the message was a single sentence from the CEO. Your professionalism prevented a larger breach. We'll be in touch regarding your position. I locked my phone and stared through the windshield. Across the street, the revolving doors spun lazily. No sirens, no spectacle. Just another afternoon. I didn't go back inside. Not yet. I drove instead. No destination, just motion. Past the river, past the train yard, into the old industrial stretch, where the city smelled like wet steel and dust. I parked beneath an overpass and let the silence settle. For the first time in days, I thought about the coffee, how something so ordinary, a gesture, a sip, could split a life into before and after. I took the evidence bags from my glove compartment, each one labeled in clean block letters. Bag number 1, original cup. Bag number 2, second attempt. Bag number 3, decoy mug. Artifacts of betrayal, frozen like museum pieces. Proof that evil doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it comes with a smile and a lid. The next morning I walked into the office. People looked up, their greetings cautious, unsure which version of me they'd get. Victim, hero, or survivor. I gave them nothing but a nod. HR called me in. The room smelled faintly of paper and perfume. Across the table sat the director of operations, flanked by legal counsel. "We'd like to make this formal," she said. "You've been promoted to senior engineering lead, effective immediately. With the vacancy in management, we'll need stability. Someone who understands integrity." I almost laughed. Integrity. The word they printed on wall posters and mugs. The word Brian used to throw around when pitching transparency initiatives. But I didn't laugh. I simply said, "Understood." They asked if I wanted to make a statement to the team. I declined. "Just send the memo. The work will speak louder." By the end of the week, Miller's office was empty, his nameplate gone. Brian's desk stripped bare except for a single coffee ring, burned into the laminate. I stared at that circle for a long time before covering it with a new monitor. That night, I stayed late. The building was quiet again, the kind of silence that feels earned. I walked to the kitchenette, brewed myself a cup. No gifts, no peace offerings. Just black coffee, plain and bitter, exactly how I wanted it. As the machine hummed, I looked at my reflection in the window. The man staring back didn't look heroic or vengeful, just awake. I thought about calling Marisol to thank her for the lab work, or Eddie for the access. But I didn't. Some debts aren't paid with words. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up a blank document titled System Revisions. First item. All audit approvals require dual signature and automated chain verification. Second item. Unattended consumables are prohibited in secure areas. Third item. Never underestimate quiet people. I closed the file, leaned back, and watched the city lights flicker. Somewhere down the street, a siren wailed. Maybe theirs, maybe someone else's. Didn't matter. A week later, compliance informed me that both cases had gone to federal investigation. Brian had cracked first, confessed everything. Miller had tried to bargain, claiming ignorance, but the paper trail buried him. They'd siphoned over $600,000 through dummy vendors before I stopped it. Now both face charges: conspiracy, tampering, attempted poisoning. Karma doesn't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it's an email, time-stamped 8:03 a.m., the sound of a keycard that doesn't beep anymore, the echo of shoes on a marble floor as security escorts you out. I didn't attend the hearing. I didn't need to. Instead, I went to the small cafe near the river, the one with bad chairs and perfect quiet, and ordered coffee. When the waitress set it down, I smiled and said, "Thanks." She didn't know how heavy that word was. As I sipped, the bitterness hit the back of my throat, sharp and honest. No aftertaste, no poison. For the first time in a long while, I let myself breathe. In the end, the company moved on, projects resumed, new hires filled the gaps. But sometimes, late at night, when the lights hum and the servers blink in rhythm, I still hear Brian's voice from that day. "Peace offering. Double espresso, just the way you like it." And every time, I smile, because that was the last lie he ever told.